Hi folks, I'm Ken Kell and I'm joined by Steve Yzerman, the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. Steve, welcome to our little program here, and let's start off with the Red Wings had 5 players, prospects that played in that World Junior Championship. What's your evaluation of those players?
I think starting with the Canadian team, where we had 2 players, Jared McIsaac and Joe Veleno, both played significant roles for the Canadian team. Really pleased, for Joe, played a big role up front in the games, particularly when Lafreniere went down. As a 19-year-old, it looked like he really stepped up and asserted himself and played a really positive role in the team. Jared, on the back end, he's missed the first half of the season, and prior to heading to Europe for the tournament, I think he got in 3 games back in junior, coming off the shoulder injury. And as the tournament went on, I thought he really excelled and played a bigger role and got more comfortable. So really pleased with how the 2 of them played. Obviously Moritz, Seider playing a big role for the German team, and probably the German team might have been the surprise of the tournament, and some very talented young players. It was their first time up in the tournament for a few years. They moved up from a lower division. Moritz played very well, played a lot of minutes, played in all situations, and really pleased with how he did. And I saw the Swedish team play twice. Eliasson didn't play in the games that I was at. Jonathan Berggren played a significant role for a very talented Swedish team who lost in the semifinals, a tough loss to Russia, but a good skater, good puck skills, and he playing probably in a top 6 role for like I say, a very talented Swedish team. So he's a promising prospect, and I thought he had a good tournament as well.
So you had a chance to watch Alexis Lafreniere. Is he the real deal? What do you like about him?
He certainly played very, very well there. I've had a chance to watch him over the last couple of years. If you assess him, he's a late birthday, so he's a big, strong. He's physically mature. He has very good hockey sense, very good skills. Just an excellent all-around player.
With the 6th pick in the draft, the Detroit Red Wings select from Mannheim of the DEL, Moritz Seider.
Steve, take us back to the draft, and I know you talked about this before, but there were a lot of defensemen that you could have chosen, but you selected Mo Seider. What did you see in Mo Seider?
Well, I think he's got tremendous potential. You look at a 6'4" defenseman who's a good skater, good mobile skater, passes the puck well. So when I went and watched him, I took note of just doing the little things that you play the position, like maybe not like a end-to-end rushing type of defenseman, these high-skilled guys that are going to blow you away with skill. But I thought he plays a game that, if he continues to develop, is more of an NHL style of player, and I think he has a potential, if he continues to develop, to be a player who will play in all situations, play on a power play, definitely in a defensive role, in a penalty killing role, play with and against your top players, because I think he can play with your guys because he can get the puck up to the forwards, and when it's in the offensive zone, if they kick it back to the point, he has the ability to walk the line a little bit, get his shot through, or find the open player. Defensively, he's very good. He anticipates, which was most impressive for a young player. His anticipation and knowledge of how to defend was very good. He's still got a lot of work to do, kind of smooth things out, what can work, what works against the best players in the world, adjusting, figuring the game out at this speed. But we were very impressed when we saw him last year, and like you said, there was a good group of D-men in that draft. Just felt that the whole package, that he has a lot of upside, as well as some of the other ones that we're not mentioning their names, but some very good players in that draft.
Seider buries it on a great feed from Dom Shine, and the first goal of the professional career of the Red Wings' #1 draft choice.
Steve, how hard is it for an 18-year-old and you as a general manager trying to project how they're going to be 3 to 5 years down the road?
I don't want to say it's impossible, but you have to base it on something. One, you watch the players play, obviously, and then you based on how they play as 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds, you kind of project them. Generally, I kind of simply say, watch them play. If I like the way they play or they do certain things, they're probably going to do those things as they move forward. Can they get physically stronger? Can they get faster to adapt to playing in the American Hockey League, then eventually the NHL? I don't want to call it an educated guess, but it takes some time, and that's where these scouts that are at it year after year get better and better at it. But again, it's an inexact science because ultimately we can't predict if these players are going to get injured or not. Some of them you're hoping they grow, some of them you're hoping they put on weight, get stronger. Ultimately, what none of us know is how bad do they want it. They all want it at 17, but it's a tough road to get to the NHL, and you have to put up with injuries. You have to put, setbacks along the way, and it's hard work to play in the best league in the world. And so you do as much work as you can to find out about the person. And again, now they're 17 and 18-year-old kids. Think back to yourself as a 17 and 18-year-old. You're not the worldly man you are today, right? And that goes for all of us. So you just, you're watching them go through, they're growing up, becoming adults, and how much do they love to play? How much burning desire do they have to be successful? Time tells that, and that probably is ultimately the difference maker to whether they become great players or not. And you're kind of assessing that on a 17-year-old, so it's tricky.
Talk about the first half of the season now as we switch gears to the Detroit Red Wings. Hasn't been very impressive, but how do you as a general manager evaluate what has happened so far?
As you know, everyone knows we're rebuilding. I'm trying to watch and get to know every single player. And they're all at different stages of their career. You watch the first year players, the young players that are trying to make it to the NHL. You've seen some of them here in Detroit, like a Zadina or some of the kids in the American Hockey League, trying to assess where they at and then assess what we think their long-term potential is. Then you have that group of players that, the nucleus of that core would be the Dylan Larkins and Anthony Mantas and Hronix and at that age group of player, and that's really the core of our team moving forward. And just kind of as the year goes along, you see how they're developing, and we're kind of figure out, who's going to be here or who's an important part of the team 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And then with our veteran players, where do they fit in the short term, even in the long term? Are they, you need players to play. We need to surround the Dylans and the Hronix and the Mantas with a group of players that help them develop and help them compete on a nightly basis and gradually get better. So, you're watching your team play, you're watching individuals play, and trying to figure out where they fit in short term and long term.
It's been kind of strange because the Red Wings have lost about 180 man games due to injury this year. Is it hard to evaluate the coaching staff? Because let's face it, they haven't really had the whole lineup in for several games, have they?
There's 1 or 2 or 3 teams every year that just get hammered by injuries, and this team, we've had injuries from day one of training camp, really, and regardless of the injuries, our record, our team's performance, it's somewhat unfair to pin that on the coaching staff at this point. But the injuries make it really difficult to really know, truly what you have. So it happens. There's nothing you can do about it. You work your way around it, and it gives other players an opportunity to play. And for our coaching staff, it gives them an opportunity to try different things, and you're kind of forced to get creative a little bit, play players in different positions, adjust the systems you play a little bit, try new things because you're trying to figure it out. So you try to put up, kind of a positive spin on things and try to, learn from it all.
When you were in Tampa Bay, they went through kind of a rebuilding phase, just like we're rebuilding here in Detroit. Are there any similarities or differences between what you had to look forward to in Tampa Bay as far as making that team better as opposed to here in Detroit?
Well, when I got to Tampa, they had the first and the second pick in recent drafts. So you had Steven Stamkos, who was a young elite scorer, and Victor Hedman, who was a blossoming second overall pick. The Red Wings, the highest we've picked to this date in recent years is the 6th pick in Philip Zadina, who we're starting to see become an NHL player here. So the difference again, you go to Tampa, they've already had that first and second pick. They've got those kids, and then you had kind of a couple superstars in Marty St. Louis and Vinny LeCavalier at the time. The Red Wings don't have that Stamkos and Hedman at this time. So there's a little bit of a difference, but the process of rebuilding, kind of similar. You're trying to add some, my first year down there, we went to the semifinals. It wasn't really any of our expectation, and it changed kind of the plan. You're thinking, my first draft, we picked 6th overall, and you're kind of anticipating, well, the team has picked 1st, 2nd, 6th, we're probably another year or two, and here we go and get to the semifinals, you're picking 27th. And so things can change. There's some unpredictability or unpredictability, I guess, in this whole process. But the plan was, you know what, we're going to hold on to our draft picks. We're going to kind of build patiently. And years 2 and 3, we kind of regressed. I think we missed the playoffs in years 2 and 3, and we were adding, whether it be college free agents, junior free agents, or just trying to accumulate talent and draft picks. And, year 4, we got a little bit more competitive. So kind of the philosophy is the same. It's just the starting point is a little bit different for me.
The season is winding down, Steve, as you know. I mean, we're a little bit more than halfway through, and it's hard to believe that the trade deadline's coming up February 24th. Are you going to be active? Are you going to be passive? Are you going to take a wait and see approach? What's it going to be like for you at the trade deadline?
Our goal is to, if we can, acquire more draft choices. How do you do that? It really depends on what other teams want to do. So I can't give you a definitive answer on my plan isn't to be passive. Certainly I'm looking for ways to build for the future, and in doing that, you're trying to acquire draft picks, you're trying to acquire prospects or young players that can come into the organization sooner than later. As we sit here today, can I tell you we can definitely do that? No, what's basically teams, including ourselves, at this stage, we're getting ready for our mid-season amateur meetings, our mid-season pro meetings, which leads up to the trade deadline, and everyone is doing that between now and the next 2 weeks. So we talk with other teams and let them know this is kind of where we're at, what we're thinking. Let me know if there's anything of interest or you have any ideas, and over the course of the next couple weeks, you get a better indication of what you might be able to do come the deadline, and do that. But if we're going to do anything, if I were to answer it, I would say our goal would be to try to acquire young assets at the deadline if we can. And today I can't tell you I can definitively do that.
We'll talk more with you as we lead up to the trade deadline. I'm sure things might change a little bit, but second half of the season here, Steve, from a general manager standpoint and all your scouts, what do you look forward to here in the second half of the season?
That young core of the team, and I'll use Zadina as an example just because he's been called up. I look for him, if he stays here with the team as we get our team healthy, continued improvement. Philip Hronik, with all the injuries and missing on the back end and missing Danny DeKeyser for an extended period, it's really thrown a young player who's really in his first full season in the NHL. He's in there playing with and against with our best players and against the other team's best players every single night. Baptism by fire. He's held his own. He's learning a lot. So I look for continued development and evolution of our younger players. Even a young Madison Bowie, who's playing a lot of minutes. Watch for him to continually develop, and that goes for all of our younger players. And then really, we got some of our veteran players that are here that have term on their contracts that are going to be here. Continue to talk to the coaching staff about pushing them to elevate their game, to get it back to levels that everyone expects from them, and even to progress to become good players. They have years left on their career to play, and they have a lot to play for. So we can sit and float through the season and not try. That doesn't do anybody any good, and it's not going to happen. So every player there is looking to use the second half to improve, and they will be expected to improve, and they will be held to a standard to improve, and all become better hockey players, and gradually become a better hockey team.
Steve, last year we saw Philip Zadina play 9 games and then was sent back to Grand Rapids. Will the fans here in Detroit see guys like Gustav Lindstrom or maybe a Mo Seider for maybe a short amount of time before the season ends?
Potentially, yeah. I don't have anything set in stone, but that's certainly in the back of our mind. you mentioned Gustav Lidstrom. He's a he is a pro player. Whether he plays 1 game or 15 games in the NHL is irrelevant. His contract is in place and will go. The younger players, the Velenos or Seiders, who are, you have to take into consideration the 9 to 10 games as far as the counting towards a year pro or whatnot. You take into consideration, do we bring them up and play them some games, give them a feel for the NHL? That's certainly something we'll consider. Again, I wouldn't sit here today and say absolutely you're going to see this player or that player here, but I think it's safe to assume that at some point some of these young guys will get up here and play some games as the season winds down.
Finally, Steve, let's talk about the fans here in Detroit, because despite the record, the Red Wing fans and the attendance here in Detroit is in the tops of the league right now. So what are your thoughts about the fans and the fan support of this hockey club?
Again, you and I, we've been here for a long time. We know the passion of hockey in the city, and our fan base has been tremendous supporters. And for this year, we know where we are in the standings. We know what our record is. I've been, really thrilled with the enthusiasm and of our fan base of watching the games, supporting the team, and having a positive attitude and outlook for where we're at and what we're trying to do. So I'm very appreciative of it, and I'm hoping everybody can remain patient as we kind of go through this process, because it's going to take, as I've said, I'm going to say it again, it's going to take some time.
Appreciate your time, Steve. As always, all the best the rest of the way.
Great, thanks, Ken.